Hey, what is up guys? Welcome to MST.TV. This is Nishi here bringing you all another Market Watch episode. Now in our last Market Watch episode before Christmas, we are taking a look at a few different miscellaneous cards that have gotten some attention over the last couple of weeks. Last week we took a look at some cards that are trending because of their play in the meta, but there were of course some other cards that spiked because of other factors such as new support being announced or people speculating about upcoming products, and those are among the cards that we're going to take a look at this week. Of course, there are going to be a couple of meta cards as well. This is just to kind of round things up before the holidays begin. Anyways, guys, we do have quite a few cards to talk about today, so let's go ahead and jump right into it. First up, let's take a look at Bujinya. So Bujins are an old archetype that haven't been relevant since before Kaiser Coliseum was banned, but they did just get some new support announced to be coming up in Lightning Overdrive, the set after Blazing Vortex. There are a couple of pretty interesting cards, including what is basically an on-theme rescue rabbit, so a lot of people are definitely excited about the deck, though I don't think it's going to be top tier by any means. Anyways, right when the new support was announced, people began looking at old Bujin cards to buy up, and of course they targeted Ultimate Rare Bujinya as it was a key card when Bujins were viable in the past. In fact, we saw the Ultimate Rares as high as $60 a piece, though they have since cooled back down to around the $40 mark. The card does have multiple other lower rarity printings that are available for only $1 or $2, so you definitely have those budget options available if you decide to play the card. However, I actually believe that Yamato just isn't a really good card anymore, as it only has one effect and you can only use that effect during the end phase, which means you can't overlay or anything with the Yamato if you want to use its effect. It's basically just a vanilla at that point, so you're better off using other Bujin monsters. Now that being said, because of this hype and the fact that they've already cooled down in price, I don't see Yamatos going any lower than their current market price anytime soon, though if you can move these for anywhere close to their market value, I would definitely consider moving them while they're at this hyped up price. Now, speaking of Bujins, if you're gonna take a look at older Bujin monsters to try to pick up, the one I'd be keeping my eye on is Bujintai Susanoo. This is a really cool extra deck monster that I think we'll see play in Bujins when the new support is released. It has an Ultimate Conductor Tyranno type of effect where you can attack all of your opponent's monsters, and if you combine it with Crane, you could probably OTK people out of nowhere. And it also lets you either search for a Bujin or dump one to the graveyard from your deck, and that effect isn't a hard once per turn, which is pretty cool. Now, the ultimate rare version of this card is the one that looks absolutely beautiful, and it's the one I would keep my eye on. It was initially bought out to around the $30 mark, though since then it has fallen back down a bit to around the $17 price point. If you're set on picking up something for Bujins, I would definitely be looking at Susanoo rather than Yamato, since I think it's a much more viable card for the strategy given the new support. Either way, the card does have a few lower rarity versions as well, including the tin version that kind of looks like a Starlight rare. Now, this isn't to say that you should be actively looking to pick this card up in any version, because as I said before, I don't think Bujins are going to be meta relevant even with the new support. But if you are wanting to play the deck and you're extremely keen on picking up the cards now before they get any higher in price, I would definitely look at cards that are actually going to be useful and viable the way that Yu-Gi-Oh! Is played in the year 2020. Next up, let's talk yet again about Snake Rain. So the next side set that the TCG will be getting is confirmed, and it's called Ancient Guardians, and it follows a similar format to Toon Chaos and Genesis Impact, where it consists of just the rares, supers, ultras, and then collector's rares. This time we are getting another 3 new strategies, one that is pendulum based, one synchro based, and another one that uses main deck monsters and revolves around the graveyard. Now, interestingly enough, the art for the graveyard based archetype looks like it could be a snake or reptile type monster, and the little bit of information that we have to describe the archetype says that it will help make your graveyard rain with monsters so you can pit them against your opponent, which definitely hints at Snake Rain maybe being a useful card with the new archetype. Now anyways, people have freaked out about this a little bit, and Snake Rain has always been one of those cards that people have always thought will be crazy whenever we get a good new reptile archetype, because it's basically 4 copies of Foolish Burial in one, and it only has 1 printing from way back in Tactical Evolution. The result of this is that this card is now up at around the $8 to $9 mark. Now, not too long ago, we saw this card spike in price when people first heard about mutants because they thought that mutants could be like the aliens and be reptile monsters, so they would benefit from the card, but that turned out to be totally wrong. Anyways, this is definitely something that I would sell now because of all the hype. I don't know what the new support is, but I would argue that if it's really that important for the archetype, we will probably see it reprinted in the Ancient Guardians set itself, so the price is going to tank either way. Anyways, I've seen enough people disappointed by Snake Rain at this point over the last couple years to know that it isn't really something that I would want to be investing in or gambling on. Okay, we're going to talk about a few different meta-relevant cards for a second here. Now, really briefly, I want to mention Nadir's Servant, a key piece of the Dogmatica archetype from Rise of the Duelist that allows you to dump a monster from your extra deck to the graveyard, then search for a Dogmatica monster that has less attack than the monster that you dumped. This card is obviously really key for the Dogmatica engine, and though it isn't a pure deck itself, it works really well alongside various other decks, such as the Eldritch, the Zodiacs, and Evil Twins. Because of the success that the archetype has seen at competitive events over the last couple of weeks, we are seeing the demand for Nadir's Servant increase, with quantities gradually disappearing from the market, and the price has gone up to around the $90 mark for a single copy. This is a pretty hefty price tag for a 3-of, especially when you consider that there are big decks in the format such as Drytron and Virtual World that don't use the Dogmatica cards at all. However, we aren't expecting a reprint of Nadir's Servant until the 2021 Megatins at the earliest, which probably isn't going to be until around September or October of next year, and that is a long time to go without having access to such a key engine. Given how popular the engine has been, I really don't see this card falling in price anytime soon, maybe down to around the $80 mark if we see some other archetypes become a bigger part of the meta, though I could also see the card jumping up to the $100 mark just as easily. Next, we have Dawn Knight. So this is an important card for the Drytron deck, though it is just a 1-of. Drytrons use this card as an equip target off of Union Carrier. You just equip this card to Union Carrier itself. Then when it goes to the graveyard, Dawn Knight goes with it. So you can use Dawn Knight's effect to get a Drytron monster from your deck to the graveyard, which can summon itself back out and get your deck's combos going. Now, this card is a brick, but I do think it's an important one to have access to, as it can open up plays for you where you would otherwise be stuck. Now, interestingly enough, this card only has 2 printings, a rare version from Primal Origin, which is up at $4 each, and the highest rarity version, which is a platinum rare from the Noble Knight collection box, which is around $6 now. I've always thought that the platinum rares were kind of ugly. This card is no exception. I'd honestly rather play the rare if I were going to play Drytron, but technically the platinum rare is the highest rarity because it's the only holo version available. Now, this definitely isn't a card to invest in, rather it's a card that I think is worth digging out of your bulk and offloading now, while it's a useful card in a meta-relevant strategy. Another card that is seeing play in Drytrons now is Ava, a level 1 fairy monster. This card is a search target off of Cyber Angel Benton, and it allows you to search for level 2 or lower light fairies by banishing light fairies when it is sent to the graveyard. The idea is that you can discard this card alongside Herald of Orange Light, and then use Ava's effect and banish copies of Benton or the Orange Light that you just discarded to search for other cards, which is typically going to be another copy of Herald of Orange Light, a Herald of Purple Light, or a Cyber Petite Angel. Now, this card is kind of a brick, especially now with Herald of Perfection and Herald of Ultimateness not really being as popular options for the Drytron strategy. However, it's still a really useful card just in specific situations. So Ava only has 1 printing from the Wave of Light structure deck, and even though it is just a 1-of, that structure deck wasn't really that popular, so it wasn't heavily opened, and Ava is now a $6 card. It is just a 1-of, and it's not like the card is super expensive right now, so if you want to play Drytron, I would just go ahead and pick it up. However, I definitely wouldn't go out of your way to pick up multiple copies of this card. As an older structure deck card, I could definitely see this card being reprinted as something like an OTS pack common, just to ensure that the card is accessible, which would definitely cool its price back down. Next up, this is an interesting card that's kind of low-key that I want to talk about here. Sky Cavalry Centaria is a rank 2 monster that can't be destroyed by battle while it has Xyz material, and if it battles a monster, you can detach a material from it to bounce the opponent's monster. This card is potentially useful for a couple of different rogue strategies, those being Evil Twins and Melfies, as they are two archetypes that can actually get multiple level 2 monsters onto the field relatively consistently. Obviously, this isn't the go-to option when you're playing with those decks, but it's important to keep available as an option because it allows you to go into double A Zeus really easily, as it can't be destroyed by battle. It also helps you to potentially get rid of an opponent's problem card, since you can even get rid of something like Red Eye's Dark Dragoon if you've already burned the negate. Obviously, Evil Twins and Melfi aren't meta or top tier or anything like that, but they are fun decks, and casual players wanting to play those decks and try to make them competitive will probably want to pick up this card. This is something that only has 2 printings available, the original from Secrets of Eternity and the reprint in the Megatins, both of which are around the $10 mark at the moment. Obviously, because it's just being used in rogue strategies, this isn't a card that you should be scrambling to buy, but rather something that you should be looking to offload as soon as possible before it gets reprinted. It has been quite a few years since this card was last printed, so I could definitely see this card being reprinted in the upcoming March reprint dual overload type of set to make it more accessible to the player base. Really briefly, we should talk about Firewall Dragon here. I think everyone knows by now, but on the most recent OCG ban list, Firewall Dragon was actually put back to 1 and received an errata where it can only special summon Cyberse monsters. Obviously, this makes Firewall Dragon much more manageable and no longer the broken card it was before. However, the market has still reacted with a lot of hype for the card. Now in the TCG here, the card only has 2 printings available, the original from Code of the Duelist, which is about $13, and the Megaton reprint, which is about $9, both of which are secret rare printings. Now I think it's safe to say that when we do eventually get the card back here in the TCG, we will get an errated version as well, maybe with the alternate art. And of course, the card probably won't be too meta relevant anymore, unless maybe we get a new and exclusive Cyberse archetype at the time, and Firewall Dragon would just help to support that new archetype. Now despite this, a lot of people will still want to have the original first edition copy of the card, so I would expect that version to retain a decent chunk of value. I actually think that if you can get them for only around the $10 mark or so, original first edition Firewall Dragons are a pretty safe hold, since they will certainly spike in price when the card does eventually go back to 1. However, I'd probably look at offloading the reprints wherever you can, just because they aren't the original first edition print and will likely fall back down in price after the card gets reprinted. And the final card that I want to talk to you guys about for a second is Light Imprisoning Mirror, a card that I think people are just starting to look at as a potential side deck option this format. Now, Light Imprisoning Mirror will basically shut down Drytrons completely, as every single monster in the deck is a light monster, and Light Mirror shuts them off from even using their graveyard effects, which is really cool. Obviously, if your opponent has a Herald up and they are going first, it's not that great, right? But it forces them to use something like Twin Twisters or Cosmic Cyclone if you're going first and you can set the Light Mirror. Now, this card will also put in work against the Dogmatica engine, negating the effects of Ecclesia and Maximus on the field, as well as Entis in the graveyard, which is cool. It also stops your opponent from using Eldritch's graveyard effect, though if they draw it, they can still send the Light Mirror by using Eldritch, so it's not that great. Against pure Eldritch, against Eldritch Dogmatica, maybe it's okay. Obviously, it's not as great against Dinosaurs or Virtual World or anything like that. But if Drytron does become the best combo deck of the format, and a lot of people are on it, then Light Mirror could be a really solid side deck staple. Now, fortunately, there are many different printings of Light Imprisoning Mirror available, including several common printings that you should be able to pick up for under $1 or so. However, it's the higher rarity versions of Light Mirror that have spiked, where we're seeing the DT versions up at $9 to $10 and the Duelist League rares at about the $5 mark, with extremely low quantities available on the market. If you don't have access to this card already, I would at the very least look at digging up a set of commons and setting them aside so that you can potentially play with them and have the rest ready to move just in case they do jump up in price. However, this is definitely the type of card that you don't want to go and buy out. You just kind of want to set them out of your bulk or pick them up to round off trades or out of a quarter bin, because they have a lot of potential to go up, but aren't by any means guaranteed to do so because they're still unproven. Alright guys, that is it for today's Market Watch episode. I hope you all enjoy the holidays and get to spend some time with your friends and family, even though it may be a little bit different from how you usually do it. I am expecting the market to be a little bit slower over the next week or two, so we might be trying out some different types of content in preparation for 2021. So if you guys do have an idea of what other types of content you'd like to see on the channel from me. I'm always open to suggestions, so please leave me a comment in the comment section down below. Anyways, guys, if you did enjoy today's Market Watch, please be sure to hit that thumbs up button for me. Also, make sure you hit the subscribe button to get all of the latest and greatest content from both Tombox and myself here on the channel. And until next time, guys, don't forget to hold on to your MST.TV.